ICP holders, we're seeing something happen right now that is actually really, really good for ICP. I know it's been a difficult several months because we really haven't seen anything too crazy happening out of ICP, but I wanted to show you kind of from a very, very high level one of the things that we are seeing happening recently that I do think is very, very important to understand, to show that, you know, we may still have some life left in us for ICP. We will be going and taking a look through a whole bunch of different stuff going on, but I think from a very high level, a lot of what we are seeing happening right now is quite good, and we just have to be waiting, just have to be patient and biding our time. So let's go on ahead, let's check all of it out. Before we do that, also, if you do know what jersey I am wearing, this is one of the new jerseys that I got recently, so drop those in the comments as well if you seem to have an idea. So moving along, let's go take a quick look at the actual ICP chart itself. We can see here about $4.78 is where we're at. As you can see, nothing really changing over the past several months. I do have a trade open. We will talk about that here in just 1 second, but you can kind of see kind of the range that we've been trading in and kind of what we've been doing kind of between the two demand zones here. We can see this bottom demand zone kind of between about $4.20 and about $4.50 roughly. I entered a trade roughly in this range because we could see it looked like we were starting to kind of bottom out here and start to curl back. We have gone a little bit lower, so I do actually have, this is about a third of the total trade size that I want to open. I have a much larger buy order down in this range, assuming we do get to the bottom of this demand zone. If not, then we'll have at least some exposure if we do see a move to the upside here for ICP. So as you can see here, we do have this trade open on Weex, down only about 4% right now, about $8 currently where we're at. As you can see though, we kind of entered into this position as it looked like we were starting to find a bottom and start to make some potential moves back to the upside. Again, we'll never know for sure, and that's why I do actually have a limit order for a much larger position size down here towards the bottom of this kind of demand zone that we have seen over the past several months. If we get closer and maybe we start to wick out more into like the 430, 440 range, maybe I will actually kind of bring this limit order up a little bit. We'll just have to see. This is something at least I just kind of have right now as a little bit of kind of like a hedge for if we see a bit of that wick down here. And then of course I do have that stop loss right below kind of the bottom of this zone that we've been in, just because we need to see essentially, like, if we do see a breakthrough here, then we're probably going to continue to go lower, likely maybe even seeing kind of like the high threes, maybe even kind of the low threes or high twos, because we have seen that kind of within the past 2 or 3 years. So there is kind of some precedent for how we potentially do get back to that level. But at least in my mind, I do think we're probably locked in kind of this accumulation zone from my perspective, and then we will see a breakout at some point when we get into kind of more of that type of position in the market. We're not there yet, but that is something that we'll be keeping a close eye on. We're actually going to be taking a closer look at here, and kind of the whole point of this video. So we will be getting to that in a second. You also can see we had a recent position here on WorldCoin and Athena. You can see we had some decent moves there. Had a couple rough losses off of WIF when we saw the market downturn. Obviously not the best, and we also saw another smaller play that kind of had the bottom fall out of it a little bit. But we actually just did a decent play on WorldCoin, and this is half of the Athena gains that we have. We still have another position of this open. So again, can't win them all. Win some and lose some, but this is the recent one that we have made. And then of course, if we go to Athena, we will be able to see the other one that we still have open. And as I've mentioned, we're just kind of letting this one free ride. So you can see we have about $224 of gains, about 359%. I do have a relatively tight stop loss here at that 72. Essentially, if we break down below this resistance and get rejected by it again, as we have seen several times, we'll essentially just kind of cut that and we'll just kind of secure our profits there. But that's essentially kind of the trade that we have going for Athena. Again, if you are interested, I do have all the links to all these in the description below. I personally trade primarily on Weex and BloFin, but currently BTCC does have by far the best referral offer. using my affiliate link in the description below. If you are interested, they do 10% bonuses on first time deposits, which is a really, really good deal. So that's essentially just 10% free money, which is a great deal. Now, moving along, I want to discuss a little bit more closely what we can see here from kind of what I'm talking about of it's not quite our time yet for ICP. Right now, we're just probably sitting in a little bit of a boring kind of accumulation, maybe distribution zone, but I think realistically probably an accumulation zone. The first thing we can see here is I'm going to be keeping a very close eye on the rate cut odds here, because this is going to make a lot of difference depending on kind of what happens here over the next little while. So we can see basically one rate cut essentially guaranteed here, with actually about 11% chance of 2 rate cuts happening here right now, which I think is pretty interesting. So we'll have to keep a close eye to see kind of how these rate fluctuate, or the rate odds fluctuate between the two levels. It seems at this point basically one rate cut is all but guaranteed. Fed Powell has kind of seemed to indicate exactly that. So, but now there is kind of some increasing sentiment or some increasing arguments being made that potentially even 2 rate cuts should be on the table, just because we have, we've actually seen a lot kind of weaker economic data come in than really I think what was expected. And so there's kind of potentially the concern that maybe we are a little late to start cutting rates, and so we maybe should kind of kickstart that with 2 basis point or 2 rate cuts lumped into one instead of one. So we'll just have to see, but that is kind of where we stand right now, at least as of for the rate cut meeting that actually comes here in 10 days. So keep a very close eye on that. The other thing that I wanted to show you here is just this is kind of the phases of kind of the crypto ecosystem, right? Many of you are probably very, very familiar with this. This is something that has been around for several years. And so the reason I wanted to bring this up today is because I think it's really important at points to kind of just zoom out and think about what is actually going on here from a high level. If you look right now, yes, people are scared. Yes, economic data is bad. Yes, we may start cutting rates. Maybe, who knows? I don't know. We'll find out here in 10 days. But what we have seen still kind of holds true from a very, very high level. We are seeing Ethereum kind of hold up relatively well compared to Bitcoin. We are seeing altcoins continue to bleed, as they do, because it's not this type of season. But if you look here, we can see phase 1 is Bitcoin. We've already seen Bitcoin dominance potentially reach a top this cycle. Who knows? We are a decent bit down from kind of where the top of Bitcoin dominance was. Right now, we're seeing ETH Bitcoin perform very, very well, even despite all of the concerns and uncertainty. We're even seeing other altcoins kind of continue to bleed, potentially, kind of to both Bitcoin and Ethereum. But Ethereum's holding strong, right? I mean, this is kind of where we're at. Now, after that, we would start to see things going out of Ethereum and out of Bitcoin, maybe into some of the larger ones like maybe Solana. Maybe at this point we see something like Sui, Hyperliquid, Cardano, XRP for sure. These types of things, and then we get into full-on alt season, and this in my mind is likely where we start to see things like ICP and potentially even projects on ICP or within the ICP ecosystem do the best, is down in this range. So we're not quite there yet. This is kind of what I'm trying to kind of remind people of, is even though we've seen some really, really boring things happening out off of the ICP chart, or I guess not happening to be more correct there, it's not that time yet, right? So I think we just need to be patient. We need to wait, and we ultimately just need ICP to continue to build. And I also think we need to see the market get a little bit more comfortable with what ICP even does, and even just more educated of what the problems even are. We actually have something being reposted by Dominic Williams that is a really interesting thing that we can see here is Firebase is essentially used by Replit, Lovable, etc. When AI builds for humans, we need guarantees that AI coding errors can't cause data loss, and 2 tamper-proof software stack is used because no humans means no safety net. Caffeine plus ICP general availability mid-October. So again, we're still kind of in that like limited release of Caffeine AI in the software, but Firebase has been hacked, which is a really, really interesting thing. This, of course, is terrible news. We don't want these types of things to happen, but this is kind of the pitch for ICP, right? We've they have kind of this like tamper-proof stack. It's not hackable, again, or at least hasn't been hacked as of yet so far. And so this is one of those things that is really important. It can actually kind of bring down like IT security costs. It can bring down a lot of those types of things because of how ICP is built. Now, I actually did talk to a couple of developers who had actually DM'd me on X a couple weeks back, and they were just kind of talking to me about why they decided to build on Sui. I'm actually trying to arrange an interview with them. Hopefully, like, subscribe, turn on that notification bell if you are interested in potentially hearing more about this specific. But they actually decided to build on Sui instead of ICP, which I found very, very interesting. And they brought up a couple really, really kind of key concerns that they had as developers that was really kind of inhibiting their ability to truly adopt the ICP stack. And the main one that it basically boiled down to is that you really had to kind of use the entire ICP stack, all or nothing. And the ICP stack isn't really super compatible with kind of other non-things, right? Or like other non-ICP things. So you can't really like take a piece here, take a piece there, maybe utilize ICP for this, that, and the other thing. From what it sounds like, you can't necessarily do that super well as a developer. Now, again, this is not me, in my opinion, saying all this stuff. This is just me of what I've heard from actual developers developing in the space and the decisions that they are making. So I do find it really interesting. Of course, right or wrong, I would love to, I kind of am very, very interested to hear more about this specifically. So stay tuned. Like I said, you can like, subscribe, turn that notification bell on so you can actually stay tuned if you are interested in hearing that interview. Because I personally, at least, am very, very interested to see, kind of what potentially comes of that. So last thing I want to talk about here is we can see the Google Trends over time. I don't know if it's just me, but it feels like ICP is getting really, really boring. There's not a lot of stuff coming out. We have, of course, seen kind of that caffeine launch cycle kind of come to an end. Now they're kind of trying to continue to build hype for caffeine. Caffeine itself, honestly, I actually think is quite impressive. I've already built a couple of different apps. They're not anything super complex. They're all pretty basic. Well, that was actually one of the things that I realized myself when I was trying to build with caffeine, is I was somewhat limited in terms of actually like leaning into other tech stacks or using other things like integrating or APIs, things like that. I was having a hard time figuring that out with caffeine. I'm not sure if that's an ICP problem or just a caffeine problem itself, in the sense that it can't necessarily support that yet. But I was having an issue kind of figuring that out. And so this is one of the things that, I'm interested to kind of see how caffeine kind of matures within the market. But right now, things just feel so boring, right? I mean, when you're looking at a chart like this that you've been staring at for several months, of course, you can kind of understand why people would be bored with what's going on here, particularly when you kind of zoom out to the months prior, right? I mean, if you look at what's been happening, this is incredibly boring. Even back in 2024, we at least had more interesting things going on, right? Here, we were like kind of hyped because we were seeing some nice runs out of ICP. Here, people were all scared because ICP was really kind of selling off pretty hard. And then, of course, we had an insane run out of ICP up until kind of that peak that we saw in March of 2024. Excuse me, this is 2023. I was getting my year wrong. And then, of course, same type of thing in 2024. Lots of volatility. Even if we saw a similar kind of not a whole lot happening here, there was much more volatility going on. And then we had that nice run up, not hitting the highs that we saw in March, but hitting still a kind of a nice, decent run here back topping up in December. Here, if you look at this, there's just really nothing going on here. It's super, super boring. And so that's one of the things that I wanted to focus on specifically just with this video today, is we need to just kind of keep in mind what is still to come, what is still happening here, where we're at in the cycle. That to me is the really important piece. And I mean, we can see it exactly right here, right? Interest right now in ICP is very low. We could see back here in December of 2024, that's the highest it's been since. Even right now, it's lower than things that we've seen back in like July, even things back in like June, things like that. So overall, like I said, in my mind, this is just all an exercise in patience. I do think ICP's time will still come. It's just as of right now, we're just kind of in a little bit of a boring period. And you just got to fight the churn of the market in that case. So that's kind of my opinion here. Of course, you can take it for what it's worth. Also, please feel free to like, subscribe if you did find the information in the video useful. Also, drop some comments if you have any comments, questions. What do you think is next with ICP? How do you think it's going? All of that type of stuff. I'd really love to hear all of your comments and feedback. I do try to read and respond to all of those. So thank you all for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next one.